Remember cartoons, everyone? How all cartoons are for children? That was 100% true until a little boy named Ted Turner was like, we should make cartoons for adults. And he was the first to do it, just like he saved our planet from climate disaster with Captain Planet. But unlike Captain Planet or that one other show with Bart in it, making something actually new wasn't really in the budget. Regardless, Mike Lazo, vice president of Cartoon Network at the time, was willing to scrape together whatever they could for a true competitor to not only The Simpsons or Ren and Stimpy, but even David Letterman. Much of the crew from the Moxie show needed a warm bosom to nestle in after the show quickly faded into oblivion, and Mike Lazo had become buddies with the crew and some other folks who worked at TBS in the 80s, making commercials and bumpers for ancient Hanna-Barbera shows and other tedious crap like that. People like Matt Millero and C. Martin Croker, with Andy Merrill joining in from CNN and Adam Reed and Matt Thompson being hired out of college. The decision was made to just reuse a cartoon and its cast of characters and sort of Weekend at Bernie's its wretched corpse into some kind of sick puppet show instead of drawing new pictures like a normal show. Though, C. Martin Croker did pull double duty as animator and the voices of both Zorak and Moltar. As animator, he would handle the animation of the show, as well as the actually new cuts of animation and characters that would occasionally show up. It could be said in some ways Croker was the beating heart of the show, which makes his thankless treatment and death even more bitter as time passes, and Cartoon Network continues to ignore his legacy, as well as George Lowe and Andy Merrill, who were both Space Ghost and Brak respectively. More writers, like Dave Willis and his crayon-drawn resume, would be hired as the series gained traction with its intended audience of drunk and high college students up too late. This show itself stretched the definition of what was even allowed to be called a TV show, and in many ways, it still hasn't really been succeeded. Though, of course, its method of capturing a bunch of deranged interview footage of celebs and editing them deceptively would continue in several future productions made for the future block known as Adult Swim. Not only did the show reach a huge audience, endear a generation to characters from a forgotten 60s show, and inspire a whole movement of Dadaist adult cartoons, but pretty much everyone working on it would go on to have their own show. Aqua Teen, C-Lab, Harvey Birdman, The Brak Show, a murderer's row of incredible and beloved trash, all spawned from this trash can of a show. So join us, dear listener, as we talk about Space Ghost, Coast to Coast. Thank you, Space Ghost. In this week's episode of Cartoon Buffoons, I'm your host, Wyatt, and who is here with me today, as always?
Hi, it's me, Morgan. I'm like Black Debbie from C-Lab, but young.
There you go. And we have a very special guest today to talk about Space Ghost with us. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Toby Jones. No joke today, but I'm here.
Okay, that's okay. So we're talking about Space Ghost Coast to Coast, not the Hanna-Barbera show Space Ghost. We're talking about Space Ghost Coast to Coast. On my list of things to talk about is the second show. It's probably like third or fourth or whatever, because Two Stupid Dogs was before this, and whatever. But we're talking about it right now. We're talking about Space Ghost. It's time for Space Ghost. 30th anniversary of Space Ghost just passed, on the 15th, which is 2 days before we recorded this, and I totally planned that. That was 100% absolutely planned.
Prepping for this, I was like, everyone's talking about Space Ghost. That's so funny, and I'm like, oh, wow, I just don't know when stuff is anniversarying. Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, 1994. That's freaking 30 years ago. I was not born yet at that time.
Congratulations.
I was maybe born. I was maybe born. The jury's out.
Yeah. And Toby, you were born in the 80s. I know you're.
Yeah, I was born in '87, so I didn't have Cartoon Network at the very beginning. It wasn't part of our main cable package, so I would have to see this at like friends' houses and stuff at first, or during previews. But it definitely immediately seemed like something very interesting.
Yeah.
Space Ghost is kind of a more refined version of Moxie, because we talked about Moxie last time, and it was interesting experiment, we'll say, but maybe not an entirely coherent or consistently funny product. But the concept of like, here's random cartoon characters, and they're doing like they're talking, or they're doing like a meta sort of talk show thing. I'll say this, that as far as Space Ghost Coast to Coast goes, obviously like I didn't have cable until like into the 2000s, so watching it on Adult Swim was my first exposure to it. Obviously I was like a little bit too young when this was on Cartoon Network, though I do remember like, I would go to other people's houses and watch Cartoon Network and be like, oh man, they're still on Namek, and Dragon Ball. Like, they're still doing that, but it wasn't until like we moved to the city, which was like 2002 or 3, that I got cable in my house and in my room, and I was able to watch like other things besides PBS and Kids WB and all that.
I think like I had a very similar thing where like it was very much like I didn't get to see it until later on where we got money, and I was able to like, okay, now my mom's like, oh, we have cable, and I'm like, yay, and I saw it, and I remember Space Ghost was one of the few shows of that time that was like vaguely edgy, that my mom was okay with me watching it. Because my mom, and this is a really weird one, my mom had a big no home movies rule, and I can't remember why. I think it's something about Brennan disrespecting his mother a lot that made her have it, but my mom had a big no home movies rule. So Space Ghost, A-okay. But yeah. So I like that. I was like, this is the one
movies.
my mom.
That's great. That's so funny.
I probably we're in the one household in the universe that had a yes Space Ghost, no home movies.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. My mother, bless her heart, loves cartoons also. Real weird woman in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so Space Ghost was very important because, like, okay, this is the one that's okay. And I think I remember her later on going, this is not okay, and then going, the Brack show's okay. So the rules were ever changing. And I was,
which is funny,
as a young woman, I had to adapt very quickly.
Yeah. Space Ghost is like, so like even the early episodes, like as edgy as it is. And okay, here's my thesis I'll say about Space Ghost. Space Ghost is so ahead of its time that we still have not caught up to Space Ghost. Like, that's my thesis for this podcast, is that this show is like kind of on another level, even if it's not like the funniest show of all time or whatever.
It's up there.
What it's doing is so like charming and full of personality. It's just repurposing these old shows and like transforming. It's like taking the very idea of nostalgia for a superhero you've never heard of and turning it into like a corrupted version of itself, but also still doing, it still has like a format to it. It's not pure chaos.
And it's a very good format also. Like, and it could work today right now. Like, imagine Hot Ones, but Johnny Quest interviewing people. Yeah. That could kill. It would be amazing. Honestly, I'm holding on to that. That's my pilot. No one touch it.
Yeah, we should do that. Go ahead and pitch that. But I mean, we talked about last time where Moxie is the original VTuber.
I hate
that's true.
I hate you. I hate that you keep making me hear that.
But you mentioned that Moxie was the original like cartoon, like the
YouTube Rant
the Rant
Sona.
Sona, you know, arms crossed, you know, like for Sona in the corner, like that kind of thing. Space Ghost is very similar to that too, where it's like, you know, you see people now, like even popular cartoon reviewers like Pan Pizza, like they have like a cartoon character with a looping animation, you know, with their mouths moving, and they talk about like a subject matter. And obviously Space Ghost is like, it's supposed to be a talk show, so it's like led by whatever guest.
Yeah.
But like, you know, it's in the similar vein to, you know, the cartoon personality talking about something, doing that kind of thing. And like with Space Ghost, I feel like the shows that really crib from it, like Eric Andre and things like that, like those are really good, and maybe in some ways are like better shows than Space Ghost, but there's like a purity there's like some kind of like weird, like just a couple of dudes making a show kind of purity to Space Ghost that reminds me of Mystery Science Theater. Like it has a similar vibe to that, where it's like they're not talking about these movies because they're like, oh yeah, we really want to talk about the crawling eye. No, it's because that's just what they had, and they're gonna like write around what they have, you know, and like make something from that.
I also think there's a quality to Space Ghost that like it's not lost today. It still exists, but there's very much a like, me and two other people found this to be the funniest thing possible, and I'll do everything in my power to put this in. Like I think truly that like people talk about every aspect of Space Ghost. I want to sit down and talk about the sound design of Space Ghost, because there are many jokes that exist good because there's a single cue card hitting a table at the perfect time and it's loud, and eyes just start crying laughing of him just ignoring, just like tap tap tap. Well, anyway, Zorak, and I'm just like, oh, I'm dead. Like,
and Zorak blinking, like
yes!
how loud is blinking?
That one sound, yeah. Like I remember, we've talked about this previously, but the kind of room tone sounds in the show are very inherently funny, and they make it so that if you cut to someone doing like basically an anti-reaction shot, where you cut to a still drawing where a character is not reacting to a joke, which is like half of what's so funny about this show. On KO, we really wanted to use those sounds, and we had to like build them from scratch to replicate them, because we didn't know how to like get them, because I don't know where they came from, how they made them. So we spent a lot of time one day building those sounds.
Because KO has a lot of like sound, like jokes that are like in editing or like sound engineering or whatever. Like they're so subtle that it must be funny to only people that worked on the show, and then in turn that's like funny to people that like are able to catch it, because it's infectious, you know, you just like get caught up in that. So like when somebody does something and then they have to like undo it and it's the same sound effect but in reverse is like such a subtle joke that like no 7-year-old or whatever, or maybe even, you know, like whatever, most people watching it probably wouldn't catch that, but if you do catch it, you'll think it's like a funny secret joke, you know, and then you'll be attached to it or whatever, like it'll like endear you even more to that thing.
And then speaking to kind of the conversation about like feeling like it was just made by some friends cracking each other up, I think that's a big part of it. And to me, another thing about that makes the show feel special even now watching it is there's kind of a sense of like getting away with something, or like a prankishness, where it's like, imagine like, again, you're channel surfing and you see this thing, and it's like almost like a joke that it even exists and is put on mainstream television. It's like, can you believe we're putting this on TV? And that's part of what makes it so funny.
And like the people making it, they were like all people who worked. We talked about this a bit with Moxie, but it's all people who worked at like TBS, and they were just doing like cutting promos and doing commercials and things like that for like marathons for like Hanna-Barbera shows and things like that. And eventually Mike Lazo was able to like get together enough resources and pitch the idea of just making Cartoon Network. And Space Ghost, the name, it came from the fact that they were doing a Space Ghost marathon that they named Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And then eventually, like, they just got so attached to this weird show that they just were like, we want to, like, oh, isn't it like this character Zorak or whatever is funny, or you know, like these random characters that they just get attached to, like one-off characters and things like that. And I always think about that because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that like I've watched with friends or have watched online with like Morgan and some of my other friends online, where we get like weirdly attached to, like, we're watching Power Rangers or whatever, and we're just like, we're all about like Squats and Babu for like an episode or whatever, and we're just riffing and like coming up with entirely new characters for them as we're like talking about it. And it's like that feeling, like turning that into a show is just like having the power to do that, because Turner was like, whatever, take all this crap that who cares about this stuff anymore. But not to say that like the original Space Ghost is like a terrible show or whatever, but like it was from the 60s. They didn't really care about it other than in reruns.
I also hope it's not nostalgia. It's probably not, because but like, I think of the characters they picked that be regulars, I think more Malto and like Zorak, their designs are burnt into my like brain. Like
perfect.
They're really good. As someone who like is obsessed with like superhero designs, they're very like well designed and also kind of nothing. But like, I could be across the room and read what they are. The fact that there's multiple bug dudes in Space Ghost, but Zorak looks so specific, is like kind of a testament to him. Like, and I think it's just the shapes going on and the colors, and God, it's just like as a kid, like drawing, I'm like, I could draw you Zorak's mouth with my eyes closed and both my hands tied behind my back. I can draw his head right now. Like,
yeah.
It's an incredibly specific shape.
Yeah.
And it's like, and also it's like, you can draw it and it'll be clear, but also it's very complex and difficult to draw at the same time, where it's like the shapes of like the way his vest works and stuff, speaking from recent experience, it's like much harder than I expected to draw these characters. And it's because they're like very sophisticated designs.
Yeah, I did want to ask about that, since one of the reasons I wanted to have you on was because you recently, you know, the recent season of Jellystone, the first half of it premiered, and you were on the one episode that people on Twitter actually watched, which was
should have watched all the other ones too.
Yeah, well, I'll say this: I watched some episodes of that season as well, like alongside that one, and as good as the Space Ghost episode was, the one that made me laugh the most was one where it's like Doggy Daddy gets a changing device that like turns everybody into Augie.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
Because I love those two so much. It's such a bizarre swing to turn like a father-son duo into like a father who is like neurotically obsessed with like protecting his daughter, and then the daughter is like blissfully ignorant to how sheltered and like weird her life is and everything. It's just so funny. Like, they're just such funny characters. And like, I talked about this a bit in the video I did on Chowder, but like, whenever they do episodes where it's like, all right, you know, here's the main format of like these characters, like Yogi and like Top Cat or whatever, but sometimes we'll get episodes that are like the kid characters hanging out, and there's just like a sort of I don't know, there's something like more gleeful and fun about that that's like makes it so that whenever there's an episode where it's like Augie and Shag and Yahi Doodle, like they're all of them together as like a team, I'm like, this is just like such a good, if the show was only this, it would still be really good.
Also, I don't
but the fact that it like has so many different like groups of characters that it pulls from, it's just such a well-made, you know, like cast of characters in the show and everything. It's just every single group of characters is funny in like their own unique way. What are you saying, Morgan?
I don't want to like have to go on a Jellystone thing, but like I do want to say that like it's very much one of those shows that makes me, as someone who just likes to design characters for no other reason, really appreciate how you could change a very iconic design very slightly to work in different ways. Because I've been rotating the changes to the Jetsons in my brain since I saw them. Like, I don't know, like something about Elroy's like face mask with the emojis. I was like, oh, we've just peaked actually. I think because I'm like, no, because like we're finally moving the future forward on their designs, but they still very much read as them. I'm just like, this kicks ass. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I don't know where those specific ideas came from, but I will say, you know, Callie is one of the main designers in that show, and she, I think, is one of the best designers out there as far as like coming up with incredibly charming stuff. Yeah. And so, yeah. And can I take two seconds really quick? I have to quickly check something outside. Can I just be right back?
No problem.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm gonna keep recording. I'll be right back.
We'll just vamp. Or not, I don't know.
We're vamping. No, we're vamping. We're talking.
Perfect Hair Forever.
No, not that. We're not vamping on that. We're not vamping on that.
No, we're not talking about. We'll be talking about Cartoon Planet in a later episode. You'll have to see.
Is C-Lab one of them? I've been meaning to ask you. Are we going to talk about C-Lab? Because I rewatched C-Lab like a few months ago, and
I don't, because I have some of the Adult Swim shows that are like that, because there are some shows that aired on Cartoon Network before Adult Swim existed.
Yeah.
Like Brack, Harvey Birdman, Aqua Teen, and C-Lab all aired like a year before Adult Swim came out. So like I count those as like, sure, we can talk about them if we want to, but I'm not sure if I would talk about like every Adult Swim show. That's a different thing. That's a different, you know, that's a podcast that already existed. They couldn't go the distance. We will though. But
I'm just asking because, man, C-Lab's vibe is different. It's the same premise as a lot of these other shows, but boy, is it different.
Yeah. And C-Lab is like, I don't know. There's just something like Space Ghost is. Again, it's like kooky. It's friends like screwing around and everything. C-Lab is like demented. It's
like Space Ghost is your friend who makes like a chiding comment about you. C-Lab is like being held at gunpoint sometimes.
yeah. Especially like when you get to season 2 and it's like there's so many episodes that are like fuck you, just like wasting your time and like actively like annoying you or pissing you off, like the Bizarro episode.
Bizarro,
and everything. Like, Bizarre. In the episode where it's just like, oh, here's an episode of C-Lab, but we just dubbed it over with the characters.
Yeah, it's, man, I was rewatching it and like, I feel sorry for Kathy, but like, just walking in and seeing C-Lab, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, hey, look, sometimes we will watch cartoons. Also, that show's horny. That show's like.
I just got back. You're talking about the post Space Ghost shows.
No.
Yeah, like similar. Yeah, we're talking about C-Lab specifically.
Just like if we're going to do it or not, like because
if we're gonna, because I say that there were a few of those early Adult Swim shows that aired on Cartoon Network first, a year before Adult Swim existed. Do those count? I have them on my list, but I'm willing to change it if they don't really count, especially because I don't want to do every Adult Swim show, because like I said, that's the deep end. That's a show that already existed.
Well, because also there are some shows that were produced. There are some shows and pilots that were produced at Cartoon Network Studios. Like Korgoth the Barbaria was produced at Cartoon Network Studios, and Primal was produced here. And so was Black Dynamite was produced at Cartoon Network Studios. Actually,
I do want to. I want to talk about Primal.
I think it's probably like when we get there, it should probably be partially was it produced at Cartoon Network and also partially vibes, because like listen, love C-Lab, literally shaped my sense of humor in a way that I'm saying is a negative. But like I think vibe wise, I don't know if it hangs. C-Lab cannot be anything but a cartoon for adults. In a way that I think Space Ghost is a little malleable at times.
Space Ghost has a sense of innocence to it, even in the later seasons when they start swearing. Yeah. Although I do have a slight preference to the seasons where they aren't swearing.
Same,
me too. I think so. I think that the season 6 is like the final on Adult Swim season is like the best. The show, like the so many like it's very short, but there's just every single episode is just so funny, and it has the Conan episode, the Fire Ant.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Like that, and that was another. It's like Space Ghost and Conan were both like. Well, there was Conan a resurgence last week because of Hot Ones.
They're spiritually connected too, because like I remember when I was a kid and I was getting into watching late night shows, and I was like, I must have been 8 or something, and I was like, wow, Jay Leno is the funniest guy ever. And then my friends would be like, hey, have you tried tuning in to the show after Jay Leno? And I was like, what? And then I watched Conan, and I was like, oh, this is 1,000 times funnier.
Yeah.
And then I think that both of those shows were very ahead of their time and subversive.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, they were taking like late night talk shows and like kind of mocking them or making fun of like the idea of being a late night talk show and everything, like because this show, like they'll have people on and they'll just desperately be trying to treat it like a normal show, and then they'll either like roll with it and like torture them or edit it in such a manipulative way to like completely reconstruct what they're saying, which is very funny. I'm not saying that's like unethical or whatever. I think that's
I'm like of two minds. I can't decide which one's funnier to me, because the Hulk Hogan interview where they edit him to be basically saying nothing. And I know, as a wrestling fan, Hulk Hogan was probably not saying anything. But like then you have episodes, and I remember this is like a formative childhood memory. I remember this so vividly because my mom was with me watching Space Ghost here, and like older black woman. They had Garrett Morris, he was on. And there's a lot of parts where him and Space Ghost are just having a real conversation in a way that I'm like, this is really funny. I'm like, dude, I feel like I'm like at a weird cookout, and Space Ghost is like this. You ever think it's funny when white people talk hood to be impressive? And I'm like, okay. Oh, okay, official brother Space Ghost, thank you for being very woke on this, coming at these white people for doing black sense. And Garrett Morris has like a real laugh at it, and I'm like, this might be like the best. Like, whenever you get like legitimately funny people to play off of Space Ghost, is when some of the best moments happen. Like,
yeah, because I think like, especially I'd say season 2 is when they really start to pick up, like and get into the flow, which is true for like pretty much every show in existence. But season 1, there is still a lot of charm to it. It does remind me of
there, because like they're playing that live stream right now of the show on YouTube, and so as part of preparing for this podcast, I would throw on that live stream that's happening, and they aired one of the final episodes back to back with the first episode, and it's like the first episode pretty darn funny in its own way.
Like I watched the first, like I didn't watch every episode of all the seasons, but I watched I watched like 40 episodes of the show for preparation for this, just like rewatching them, and like season 2 like begins with like the one where it's like the cartoon contest between like Kennedy and Craig McCracken and Van Partible and everything. Morgan pointed out, like when she was watching it, like, man, Van Partible's fucking hot.
He's so
like,
good.
Van Partible is like...
he's so good looking, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, hello. He's like, it's also nice to see all of them and see how they react, because they all talk to Space Ghost very much like, oh, they know. They know, they work, they know. And I'm like, this is really good. And I think those are also some very special episodes of Space Ghost. Like, that one's really good. Also, the table read episode is fantastic of Space Ghost.
There's the episode where, like, is it Andy Merrow who's in the, like, Space Ghost costume as, like, Joey? He's, like, it's like a normal live-action character in front of a green screen, like, interacting with... like Brack or Zorak and Moltar and everything, like stuff like that. It's just like every so often you get an episode like that, or sometimes there's just episodes that have like no guest or whatever. They just go off on this like weird tangent. And it's like, what are they doing? Like, what is this show? Like that's when you know that they're having like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
just like putting it together.
And like going through this, and then also doing the Brack show in my own time, and like Aqua Team Hunger Force, I've just decided, and I'm going to hold it to it. George Lowe might have the funniest voice on earth. I might just full stop go. He might just have the funniest voice, inflection, and delivery on earth.
Yes. The episode, one of the ones that really jumped out at me during the stuff that I was watching was the episode Boat Show, which is the one that's like a musical, like a Broadway musical thing. Yeah. And not only does George Lowe have an amazing comedy voice, but his singing voice is absolutely incredible. I was like shocked.
Man, yeah, there's so many. And like he came back and like just slipped right into the role again, like with Jellystone. Like
truly Italian.
Like you should talk about that because not only is Space Ghost there, but then like Andy Merrill as Brack, and like Brack and Zorak and Moltar introduced doing like the R. Crumb keep on trucking.
Yeah. So we'll do a little Jellystone sidebar here. So Ian had a really strong idea for a Space Ghost episode in OKKO that we were really excited to do, and I will not spoil the concept, but it would have included all the main characters. But of course, C. Martin Croker passed away, and so we decided not to do it. And then, much to my surprise, my first episode on Jellystone was this Space Ghost thing. And at first, I didn't know exactly how they were going to do it. I thought it was going to be an entirely new versions of these characters, which the Jellystone ones always kind of are. And so and of course Jan and Jason Blipp are there, so I'm like, okay, it's maybe more based on the 60s one. So I watched a bunch of episodes of the 60s show to prepare, and then Carl was like, oh no, we want to try to get Andy and George to play those versions, and I was like, okay. And so I wrote to kind of infuse both versions of the characters kind of together. And of course, I didn't know who they were going to get to play Zorak and Moltar, but they're all kind of like half villainous, half like their coast to coast versions.
Yeah.
And the keep on trucking thing was just, I don't know where that came from. I just thought it would be funny. It
was funny.
I just, for some reason, it's like, I'm really excited to see these characters again. What is the most dramatic way we can see them pop up again? I guess they burst in with a keep on trucking.
Yeah.
And the team did a really good job executing that and making it really well animated. But yeah, George Lowe, I wasn't there when he recorded, but afterward they were just like really, really thrilled by how good of a job he did. And he does nail those lines. He is himself. But I was able to sit in for when Andy Merrill was recording Brack, and that was amazing to watch, because it's like, you're fucking watching. I couldn't imagine that in my life that I would ever get to see Brack perform live, and he was doing all these crazy ad libs. So it was like this thing where it's like, not only is he saying my funny lines, but he's also adding a bunch of funny lines. And like some of those runs in that episode that he does, the shot just hangs on him and lets him go. And like to make room for that stuff, they had to cut like whole sections out of the episode to make room for these like long ad lib runs. Which is like, the thing is, it's like, that's what people are there to watch.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I totally understand.
That episode, like, there's a scene where he's like babbling in front of the like, I got more mail on Cartoon Planet, like that it's just like so funny. And then like I don't know, Andy Merrill is just so beautiful and perfect as Brack, and it's interesting because like I do want to talk about like the post show sort of like. A lot of the people who worked on the show, C. Martin Croker, like he passed away, and he was like, he did not get any royalties or anything from the show. He was not a guy who was like, oh yeah, I'm a higher up executive at Turner or whatever. Like he was just sort of like chewed up and spat out. And like similarly with Andy Merrill, like he's been posting on Twitter recently about like, because of the 30th anniversary of Space Ghost, that like kind of his bitterness that he has about it. And it's like totally reasonable, but he still maintains this like, he still is like proud of what he created,
you know,
or what
you
he was
can't
a
take
part
the
of.
love out of someone
Yeah.
for the work. You know, the work and the characters. It's like, and it's like it's a painful thing where it's like, oh, you know, I can relate on some degree where it's like this thing of like, you can love the thing, you can love the company in a way, you can love what the company represents and the creations of the company. But at the end of the day, you know, can they really love you back in the same way? You know,
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a very painful thing.
That's the thing, and that's what I want to, like, the line I want to toe in the show is, like, I want to talk about these shows, and I want to talk about how important they are to me in my developing brain, and I want to, like, highlight the people that created them and everything. Like, I don't want to just give all the credit to, like, that the nebulous Cartoon Network brand is what created all of these shows. It was that people were drawn to an idea and a vibe, and they were allowed to create stuff, you know, because of that. So it's something a little bit more nebulous and a little bit more gray than it was like, oh, Cartoon Network itself created all of these shows. Like, no, these different people created it. And even, like, very similar shows have different vibes. You know, like Dexter's Lab had Craig McCracken on it, but when Craig McCracken makes his own show, it's like a little bit different from Dexter's Lab. Like, it's a little bit more towards one direction, like a little bit more action-y and whatever, you know. And then, like, yeah, like, as it goes on, like, you start to get people, like, you have, you know, like, you worked on Regular Show. That was the first show that you worked on Cartoon Network, correct?
Yes.
And then you have something like OKKO, which is, like, similar to Regular Show. Like, it has a lot of elements of Regular Show, but it kind of, like, takes things in, like, an even more wild, cool direction. Whereas, like, Regular Show wasn't super concerned with being cool. It was kind of concerned with being, like, insane or whatever, like, just having, like, this sort of,
and, like,
but like a dry sense of humor despite being completely off the wall.
Yeah, the shows are very fundamentally different because it's like, at the end of the day, Regular Show is not very cartoony.
No.
And OKKO is incredibly cartoony. And then my own personal sensibility would probably go, like, somewhere in between, and so you can see how these things kind of end up working.
Yeah, AJ's Infinite Summer, great pilot. And then the second episode that you did and, like, put on your YouTube channel is, like, even funnier than the like, fully produced pilot. I've talked about this before, but like that scene where the dad drinks the orange juice and, like, it's not warm enough. And then AJ shoots the laser beams and it's like, like the funniest laser sound effect I've ever, like,
I mean, look,
makes
Maddie
me laugh
Maddie
so
gets
hard.
Full credit for coming up with the whole joke of the orange juice because she ordered that thing. Although I did come up with this, I did sound design that, so I'll take a little bit of credit for that part. But, to your point about the way that the point of view changes,
I think,
but that.
Like,
go ahead.
I just think, like, one of the, like, most beautiful things about cartoons specifically is, like, this very interesting chain of, like, this was someone's first work with, like, one of these studios, and then they went here, and, like, you can see personality come out from the whole team. And when other people go to other things, you can still pick up on those things, and, like, it's always just really nice. Like, talking to my friends who work in the industry and stuff, and just seeing, like, how they're like, my sense of humor changed a little bit from working with these people, and it helped me in the long run. It's really nice. And I think we listen, I love Cartoon Network. I always love Cartoon Network is what I came up with. We too often give credit to the kind of thing to a nebulous idea of a company when really it's people. It's people. It's people you work with that make you like this. Is people that you talk to that make you like this. And it's, like, the most beautiful thing about cartoons. Like, not to give a shout out to my friend Shannon who worked on Archer, and now Hitmonkey, but, like, talking to she's like, Frisky Dingo was a very big influence in me, Morgan, as a weird show no one remembers. And she's like this, well, I didn't work on that, but also I know the connections because, you know, my bosses did and stuff like that. And it's just really
they carry
neat.
the legacy.
Yeah, it's neat to see that.
With Jellystone, you know, it's like Sage Greenblatt, like, he worked on so much stuff the past 2 decades that it's just, like, kind of hard to fathom that it's like, all the cartoons I thought were the funniest shows ever, he worked on and he did like what my favorite episode of SpongeBob, the Krusty Krab training video, was him and Aaron Springer, and it's like, I mean, those two as a duo are like unstoppable. Like all those episodes that they've done in like season 3 of SpongeBob is like unbelievable how funny they are, and like that one specifically is just like so funny, and then like taking that energy into like Billy and Mandy, and then making his own show with Chowder, where it's like, and then Chowder, like, this is kind of true with a lot of shows, but it's just funny that Chowder begins as like it's a wacky cartoon, but it has like a premise and characters and a world that it's like dedicated to. But then by the time you get to season 3, it's like, who cares? It's just whatever. Here's gags. Here's Chowder like doing stuff with random characters, and they're just like breaking the world. And like, I think that's funny in contrast to something like OKKO, where like the 3rd season is like the most grounded because you have to like tell the rest of the story in the 20 episodes you're given. And like, and not to say that it doesn't do like wild swings, and it's like a beautiful, like, the art style for season 3 is like really, really gorgeous.
I'm very happy with how I feel like we really figured out the look in season 3, which is funny.
Yeah.
It's just like, most shows do not get to episode, what was that, 90 or whatever, to like really figure their stuff out. But we got there, and then at that point it really figured it out. And like, just to kind of speak to some of these kind of things you're talking about with regards to like, what is the Cartoon Network vibe, right? What does that really mean? And in my opinion, it is a thing where it's like, Cartoon Network fundamentally has less money and resources than a lot of its competitors or had. And so what that means is that the shows, and this is something Ian has said a lot, is they have a bit more of an auteur feel, or even going beyond that, almost more of like the environment is almost more like being in college, you know?
Yeah.
And because there's less money and resources, there's also a little bit less oversight and a little bit more creative freedom. And so that's what happens. And it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because, because of what you don't have, you have to work harder, but also you get to make something very, very unique.
Yeah.
Go ahead. From what I've gathered, what happens in Atlanta, with shows like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, is an even more extreme version of that. Because like, and MC Chris, I saw a TikTok he did where he talked about like, hey, this whole thing is fucked up, and it all is a total. It's all has to do with the way that these corporations work. But at the same time, like, if the people who made Space Ghost Coast to Coast got paid what they deserved, then the show wouldn't have been made because it would have cost too much money, right? For what they could have done at the time. So it's like a weird, like, I don't know what you call it, but I guess I called it a double-edged sword, where it's just where it's like the fact that it was a bad situation is what enabled the good thing to happen. But it's like, it's complicated.
Yeah, there's too many like fundamental issues that cause these kind of things to happen, and like there will always, like, because things, by nature, there will always be good, fun art coming out, right? And people do work differently based on, like, the circumstances. But sometimes the circumstance that makes stuff that's really good does suck.
It's my opinion that if you make, if you have a single episode of television put on cable or put on a streaming service or whatever, released by a major corporation, you should never have to work another day in your life.
I felt that, like, there's so many jobs where I feel that, where it's like, I mean, as somebody who has done like all this grunt work and whatever, like somebody who worked at Walmart for years.
Yeah, if you work at Walmart
like
for 5 years, you should be able to just stop.
Yeah,
you should be, you should just be able to be done.
The back room, like in the back room, unloading the truck and everything. I'm like, I should be paid like $20 an hour, not 11. Like, what am I? Like, this is ridiculous. How much, like, their price got. And now, like, my current job, which is like a lot healthier, a lot more chill, and I get to. There's a lot of things, a lot of opportunities I have afforded to me thanks to having like a more relaxed job that's like still pays me full time, but it's only 35 hours a week and that kind of thing.
I
don't know that like, not to get too much into like my job or whatever, but it's just like, I see, so many people. It's almost like it's funny, like being in like a big cartoon Discord, like the cartoon community Discord, and like there's so many times where like we want to celebrate, like, oh yeah, this person, they got a job on like a show. As like a production assistant or the storyboard artist or revisionist or whatever, and like it's happy, but it's also like they won the lottery for the island because like they never show up ever again. Not because they're like, I'm too important for you guys, but they're just way too busy. And when they're not, they're like just on Twitter being like, please hire me. Like, just
I think one of the funniest things is I have a friend who went to school for animation. That's what he wanted to do. And I went to culinary school. And when I tell you mirroring of the hell situation we were going at finding jobs was hilarious to me as someone who like was still big into cartoons. I'm just like, my hours are bad. I work I'm working probably too much. I'm not getting paid. I'm not sitting down. I should probably sit down. Do you want to own a restaurant someday? Not really anymore. I would love to, but it's hard. They fail, and everyone's mean to you. And then my friend's like this. Yeah, working. I don't know if I want to be a showrunner. It's just like just us sitting down like, man, we've picked the two things that we are love and passionate about that are both just a little mean, but also I could say like, getting a product out, be it like anything, like, I don't know, I like the creativity, the creativity and how good my brain feels cooking and doing that kind of stuff. And like, it's very similar. Like, truly working in something that you are passionate about is like the best and also a giant scam, but also I'm willing to deal with the scam because I do love doing what I do. Listen, capitalism, I blame you, not the thing I'm doing. I love the thing I'm doing. You are ruining it.
For sure. And the thing you're describing is very true, which is just like, oh, you love what you do? Yum, yum, yum. That means I get to save a lot of money.
Exactly.
Because I know you love what you do,
Like, I'm sorry,
exactly. You're
this.
Desperate to get this. You're desperate to get this job? Well.
You would do this for free? Oh, my God.
Well, yeah, that's just like, especially like in recent, like right now, literally just went on Twitter and saw somebody who's like, I know is ridiculously talented and should get a million jobs posting like, I'm not hired yet, please hire me. And it's like, this person, like, so talented, and just like the fact that these people have to like work, and then like Andy Merrill specifically, the fact that he's not even in the industry, like he's not even like, he's like an Amazon delivery man, which is just like, I don't want to say sad because like, whatever, like you gotta do what you gotta do to get money in like in the world, but it's just like, it's clear that he still loves and has pride in the stuff that he created.
It's like,
even something like Space
Ghost. It's a legitimate job, but it's also a thing where it's like, he shouldn't have to work a legitimate job because he was responsible for a generationally significant series of shows and characters. And it's like, he should be able to just chill if he wants to right now, Yeah. And even like, he's a recurring character on KIF. And it's like, that should do it too. If you're a recurring character on a show like KIF, you should be able to just chill for a really, really long time.
And KIF,
but the system is very much not designed for that, unfortunately.
Because I think like all jobs should be able to support you, right? But then there's like this weird premise where like, oh no, the socialist hat is coming on. No. But like there's like this weird premise where like people are like, well, you gotta get like a real job. I'm like, okay, my real job's also not nice to me. What am I doing here? Like, cause listen, my mom, every parent tells you like, hey, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And they meant that literally, as in you won't work to make money. They just didn't tell you that. But like, I don't know, like the fact that like I have to tell people when people ask me about like industries I'm in or worked in, like, hey, make sure the thing you're working in is your second favorite thing to do and not your first. That's a bummer. That's a really bummer that I have to tell someone that. Like, I'm like, it'll ruin your first. I'm like, no, it shouldn't be like that though. And like, if you can hold on to the love you have for the things you do, I mean this from bottom of my soul, hold on to them for dear life.
Yep. Because it's it is it's for someone like me. It's like, oh, it's kind of what I live for. So yeah. Wow, this got very profound on us.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like this is the kind of show that in a way, like, it's such a pure creative force, I guess, that it kind of it brings that out of me.
Yeah, because like it is a show at its core that, like, this is a show that was created by people who, like, had stuff, had the resources, and like, okay, let's do something. And truly the purest form of creation is just kind of making something when you can. Like, I know that's like very like nothing to say, but making something when you can is like, it's the best. When it works out, it's the best of just like creating.
I'd say somebody who's like, my primary like creative outlet is writing. And there's like a couple tiers to it. The main tier, like the top tier, is like book, story, like that kind of thing. Writing chapters, fleshing out characters, doing things like that. The tier below that is my YouTube channel, where I get to write video essays and do things like that, like talking about. And I always try to do it from less so like an analytical perspective and more so like a personal, like, what did this mean to me perspective. So like it's like kind of like a review, but it's more so just like talking to you about a show rather than like giving a glowing recommendation or rating it or whatever at the end. Like, I find that like that's just not my style. And also like being very negative about something. I've written scripts for multiple things that were like negative videos that I've just like, I'm scrapping this because it's just not fun, like it maybe was fun to write and exercise those demons, but to record and edit and put out there, like, it just, I don't know, like there's just, it's not my thing.
Yeah, it can weigh on you.
And then the final tier, like at the lowest, is like doing stuff like this and doing like, in Discuss on Monsters, I would write a history segment. I think I want to do that this is our first recording session for this show. So things are still kind of nebulous, but like I kind of want to do like an intro, like history thing for like Space Ghost and Moxie and like all these shows, like going forward in a similar way to Doughboys, but maybe like, I don't know, that might like, it could easily get like overwhelming very quick. At the very least, I want to do like a sort of shout out to all the people who worked on
and that's important.
These shows, like a production level and everything, not just like the great men, like the single person whatever showrunner that made the shows, but like a lot of the people that like were, because you look at this, it says like this Space Ghost Coast to Coast is created by Mike Lazo, but like, and I'm sure he was an important component to it, but like so many of the other people, like George Lowe, Annie Merrill, Matt Mailero, Dave Willis, like all these people are so crucial to the show and like evolve from this to make their own stuff, like Aqua Teen, like freaking the Brack Show or anything like that, just like going forward, that it's like important to highlight all that. And I don't know, for me, like maybe at some point in my life it would be awesome to be able to write for something, like to have like a job, like to get paid to write. But right now it's just like a hobby of mine, and I have like another job, that, and thankfully that job is like not time consuming enough or soul crushing enough that like I can do things like this. I can record before work, multiple podcasts and have that leisure and everything.
I think,
but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you brought up something about like negative and stuff. I think one of the things about cartoons that I love so much, and I talked about this in the first episode, is that there is a level of, and I think this goes to all art. I'm not gonna say anyone doesn't work hard on art. Everyone does. Making a TV show, even ones you think is bad, is hard. Full stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But cartoons specifically, even ones I don't like, I can always pick up something about the people behind them and what went into it. And I think that's what makes cartoons so beautiful for me. And there are episodes of Space Ghost I could be full stop. Some of them didn't work for me, but I think like the premise, how it worked, how they used the footage, how they did all this stuff is so fascinating. Like like top, like from the bottom up, it's just so cool. And
yeah.
I think like I don't know. I know not everyone's like this, but it's hard for me to imagine someone watching all of Space Ghost and not going, man, what the fuck is up with cartoons? And just wanting to know more. I don't know. Like
yeah.
Like
oh, absolutely. Like I mean, but that's like our personalities are just like we're very obsessive. So it'll just be like, oh, I want to know as much as possible. Because I remember like as soon as I had access to the internet, I was like, oh, I wanted to learn about Craig McCracken and Maxwell Adams and like all the and like Mr. Warburton, like all these people that like made these cartoons that were airing in the early 2000s that I loved. And then like, you know, when I had my own computer in my room instead of like the computer, you know, that was when I started to go to like live journals and like Twitter and Tumblr and stuff to find, oh, like here's Penn Ward, you know, talking about Adventure Time, you know, and like posting pictures of like the pitch Bible for Adventure Time, and me being like, oh my God, what, Marceline, like that character hasn't shown up yet, or like, oh, the Lich, what's going on there? He's like the villain. Oh man, he's badass. And like,
it's a little bit of a bummer that like creators have to advocate for themselves so much nowadays. But I don't know. It is nice. Like I knowing like who's this Danny guy on a bumper for Cartoon Network. He makes Ed, Ed, and Eddie, and just like being a child like this is breaking my mind. Oh my God. And just like the fact that like now it's so easy to like see these creators that make these cartoons and like know what they're about and like what else they draw and what else they make and how they feel about stuff. I'm just like, this rules. This is the best. Like
I remember getting the Ed, Ed, and Eddie game, like the Miss Adventures, and like they had a bunch of like special features on that, which were like all of the voice actors and like Danny Antonucci and everybody like talking about doing the game and doing the show and whatever. And that made me like be like, oh man, Ed and Eddie's like punk rock. Like this is like, man, it's like cool as hell. Look at these guys.
And I think
that's true though.
Yeah. I agree.
And like I think like having George Lowe like be in like the table read and like have a bunch of like just being himself cameos and stuff like that. That like that's what started it for me. That's what kickstarted my like I gotta know who these people are. And it's not just like there's this funny thing of like when you're a kid you sometimes go, man, sometimes you don't know cartoons are real, but you treat it like these are real people, like a documentary vibe almost to cartoons and stuff. And you would think breaking that illusion is bad for kids. I honestly think it's a net positive.
Oh, absolutely.
Because like like that's how someone realizes they want to get into it. Like, look, begrudge any of the like stuff we were like. Listen, begrudging all like the it's hard and stuff like that. It's still great to draw and do this stuff and do these great things. And like it's nice to know that there's a normal person behind it that like, you can let's start. Like you can just go now, and that's always great. And just more. I want more of like knowing who works on shows, even at no matter at what level. Like
I think that it's cool that we have like there is something like Jellystone, and it's like, oh, you have C.H. Greenblatt doing like the voices of like Boo Boo and like a bunch of other characters. You know, and you can be like, oh, that's funny. I think that character's voiced. And then, like, you look through the credits and you're like, oh, it's voiced by Carl Greenblatt. Who is that? Oh, he's the creator of the show? And then, like, you're like me. You go into his live journal and you learn, like, you go through it and be like, oh, man, that's when this episode of Chowder was airing. Or this is when he was still working on Billy and Mandy. Like, when he was still, like, he was doing the pilot for Chowder. And then going through it and talking about how the finale of Chowder was based on Dragon Ball, and I'm like, what?
and it brings me to like the thing of like, I don't care how old I am. I don't care if I don't like the cartoon. I will always lose my mind and pop when a creator puts themselves in the background or in the scene. I will never stop because you know what? You deserve that. You busted your ass. Be there. Like, listen, CH is like, oh, I want to be a little puppet. You're right. Damn right you're a little puppet. You can be a puppet. Let me see the puppet. And I'm just going to be excited about it because flex a little bit. Like, making a cartoon's hard.
I love that, like, you know, like talking about Ed and Eddie, like one of those moments was when you know, like Ed is like jumping on Jimmy, and he yells, "Prepare to meet your maker!" And then Jimmy's saying, "Antonucci?" Like, that was the first time I remember like a cartoon like directly name dropping the person who like created it. And then like previous episode I have no idea. Whatever. We talked about like Craig McCracken like appearing in Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and being like, "Oh yeah, I know that's Craig McCracken. Like I know that's that guy because like he was in commercials, like drawing the Powerpuff Girls and doing things like that, you know." And I'll talk about this more in the like Powerpuff Girls episode, but I do remember like a very funny. There's like a childhood memory that I have when I was like 5 or whatever, talking to my dad, and I was like, "I know it's a show for girls, but I actually think that the Powerpuff Girls is pretty funny." Like, it was like having like this astute observation about Powerpuff Girls, even though it was like a show. It's not for girls or whatever. It just has female protagonists. But like, and then he was like, "Yeah, I think it's really funny too. Mojo Jojo, that guy's hilarious." And I'm like, "Yeah, he gets it." And I'm like, to this day, as a 30-year-old, I'm like, Mojo Jojo, that guy is funny. But anyway,
one thing that also makes me think about is like, you know, as far as like the whole thing of like making the viewer have like a strong interest in who made the thing and how. Space Ghost is actually a really interesting example of that, because like as a kid watching it, you literally are like, how was this made?
Yeah.
How much of the interview did they know? Like, did they just get raw footage?
Oh, yeah.
Like, were they talking to Space Ghost? Who were they talking to? Like, the concept inherently makes you ask those questions. And the show doesn't answer them on purpose.
Yeah.
It keeps the veneer of mystery and magic over the whole thing. And I remember like there was like a news report that there was like a behind the scenes of the show, and seeing like the video toaster style program they used to like composite the stuff together, I was like, whoa. And this was like 2 years ago. I was like, oh my God.
yeah, because like, yeah, you have stuff like the Bjork interview where it's like they don't even treat it as an interview. They treat it as like, oh, it's Space Ghost's wife.
I mean, that's one of the absolute true great, one of the greatest.
I was in tears at a certain part of the episode. It's so funny.
It's time for you to go to sleep.
It's just like that stuff. And then like, you know, you can see like even later shows like C-Lab are more sophisticated with their reuse of assets. Like they maybe look worse or whatever, look janky in a different way, but like in Space Ghost they just have like these cuts of animation, you know, like Space Ghost like putting his hand out, and it's like weirdly smooth looking. I think some of that was maybe like frame by frame, like timed out. It wasn't just like fully cut from.
And also, you can tell there are pieces of animation that were done in house later, and I think a lot of those were done by C. Martin Croker. And you can definitely tell when it's like a piece of bespoke animation they made for an episode, and then that gets that gets thrown into the rotation of reuse too.
Yeah,
it's like a Hydra ever growing when they add stuff. It's like, yes, it rules. Like,
yeah, it's so good. And like again, like C. Martin Croker is so talented and so like not only just as an animator and working on the show, but just like voicing Zorak and Moltar, like hilarious characters. Moltar freaking hosts the Toonami, you know, like that's like thinking about that, like watching old like DVD or like VHS rips of like Saiyan Saga and Namek, Dragon Ball Z, and like seeing
the three
Moltar being like, get ready for get ready for an episode where he fights Nappa, you know, like that, like whatever, just like talking about that, like before you know they switched over to like the Funimation cast for Dragon Ball Z.
It's just, I don't know, it's just, this is so deeply in the DNA of like everything that is Cartoon Network that like, man, Space Ghost, like I it's something that like I think like you should take some time and watch a little bit of it. Like if you do if you like any part of Cartoon Network, any of it, you should just take some time and watch a little bit of it, and It's just a good time. And listen, even if you got to just go and Google celebrities you enjoy that you want to see interviewed by Space Ghost, that's also W. Because I remember like me, like going through like this, I have to watch the Hulk Hogan episode and I have to watch the Chef episode because the cooking competition episode of Space Ghost is too funny. Are those greens? I don't like greens. Yucky.
There's also the Macho Man Randy Savage episode talking about wrestling where he plays that is we quote that so much. A mountain of a man.
Yeah, God, just so many good ones. And then like all the freaking weird game tap episodes too, like where it was just like,
I've never seen a single one of those. Can you explain those to me? Are they the same? Okay. Are they different?
No, they're like 2 minutes long. So and it's just usually like they're kind of like, I don't know, they're like weird mini webisodes. Like they feel like they were made during that early internet era, and like they feel like there would be something on like homestarrunner.com or something. Like it feels like a spee mail. Like it doesn't feel like a full episode of Space Ghost, which is fine, but it really is just like person comes in, like Billy Mitchell or whatever comes in, and then there's like a couple of jokes, and then they just kind of like Space Ghost says a few things, Zorak like quips once or twice, and then it's kind of over.
You never realize how much the like Space Ghost needs room to breathe until you've seen those.
That's like all of, to me, like that's the comedic genius of Space Ghost. Like we talked about, like the awkward silences, and then like the airy room tone, and the like this loud sound effects and everything, just to like really drive home, but without going like complete cringe comedy. Like that's where I think like Eric Andre like took it to the next level.
I remember being a kid and not knowing how long an episode of Space Ghost was, because it doesn't have a lot. They love false finishes. Boy, they love someone as a kid like this. Is this show 5 minutes, 15, or 30 minutes long? Because they're like, oh, the show's over. No, it's not. It's the screen's black, and I'm just like, that's so funny. It's so funny. Just like, I don't know, like even like looking at the big episode list when we were watching this, I'm like, there's episodes on here in one season that's 10 minutes, and then 15, and then 24, and I'm like, what was happening? What was going on?
This complete chaos. Apparently, they aired like regular Space Ghost episodes after the Space Ghost Coast to Coast episodes, and they would have like a laugh track on them, which is like, I do remember that. I do remember like some Hanna-Barbera shows having a laugh track on them, and like, but like some did, like some seasons of Scooby-Doo. No laugh track, but some did, and I was like, weird. This annoys me. Like, even as like an 8-year-old, I was like, this is annoying. Get this out of here.
So one thing I do want to say about Space Ghost before is that not really to Space Ghost Coast to Coast, but still really to Space Ghost, is I was going through all of the DC stuff, because that's one thing Max does keep is all the DC shows. They still have all those up there.
Yeah. How is that? Interesting that they keep all that stuff.
Right, it's so
other things they get rid of.
I wonder why. But yeah, I was going back through Brave and the Bold, which I think is a very fantastic Batman cartoon. And them having a straight up real Space Ghost crossover episode in the last season, where it's Gary Owens is back, like the original voice of Space Ghost to be Space Ghost. Was such a pleasant experience for me, because like I'm just like, this rules, and like the art style like looks almost exactly like the old one, but like updated to like be in line with like Batman Brave and the Bold, and I'm like, this is so gorgeous, and man, and I'm like, this is, and I think this was like a little bit before you told me we're doing Space Ghost. I was just like, yes, good. My brains and stuff like this. I can't believe this character who, like, as someone who draws superhero designs a lot, character design is kind of strange. Is just like so formative to me, and like even when he's serious, even when he's a serious superhero, I'm just like they even make a joke. It's Coast to Coast like this. He's just Batman without the ears, and he really is. His cowl's just Batman without the ears, and I'm just like, it's so cool that like there's just so many call outs to Space Ghost in multiple eras of just like Brave and the Bold was aired in the 2010s, I think, and he's there, and then now we have him in Jellystone, and I'm just like, when it was like original started, there's no way they would have known that this would have been a character that's just like thriving in a zeitgeist in a way that's very surprising.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, like we would get like, I personally, I'm all for the shows that come along and like take an established superhero or whatever, and then sort of like make a joke. I don't know, like the Thundercats Roar, which was like very controversial with people that don't watch cartoons online.
Yeah.
And me being, I was like, one, as somebody who doesn't care about Thundercats, I'm just seeing this as like, oh, a new show. Looks cool, you know, like visually looks really cool. And then, but people getting like so hung up on the idea that it's like, we got to preserve the integrity of Thundercats.
People who didn't watch the 2012 version.
Exactly, yeah. Which was just exactly what they would have wanted. Like, I think I actually like was screaming like this. The 2012 one does not stop existing. Just go watch.
Yeah.
Just watch Cowboy Bebop with cats. Okay, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, that's very similar.
Yeah, of course, Thundercats Roar was a terrific show.
Yeah.
It was very funny and very, very cool to watch. Like, the animation was amazing.
Oh, yeah, and then the...
So, you know, it is what it is. The fact is, it's like, nobody watches anything, and internet discourse is controlled by people who never watch anything and only talk about it.
I've many times began and ended an argument like this. Do you watch blank, like cartoons are bad nowadays? When's the last time you watched a cartoon that came out recently? Well, I don't, okay, bye, I'm just going to block you. I just don't want to do it right now.
It happens so much
people
with
don't watch
so
things.
many
They see an out of context clip on Twitter, or they just read something about. And I say people, I don't mean everybody. Obviously, plenty of people watch things, but it's just like it's like you said. It's just like can I just like delete everything from someone who didn't, from any opinions from people who didn't actually watch. Stuff?
Can we get ID'd? Can you like? You have to upload a serial code or whatever that confirms that you've watched this thing, and then I will listen to your opinion on it.
Every day I'm like gatekeeping's bad until it's someone who just wants to be angry. Then I'm like, oh, hold on, let's put the gate back down for just a second.
This has been pissing me off all week, so I'm sorry that you have to hear this. But the amount of fucking people that have been like, how do adults like Bluey? It's like, it's a good show. Like, it's a good fucking show that's well made by people that love what they're creating, you know?
All my friends with kids, and like, that was all TikTok, they're like this, hey guys, watching new Bluey, and they're just covered in tears. I'm like, dang, Bluey, leave me.
It's like, but it's just so, like, it's one thing for people to be like, oh, wow, I didn't expect this kid's show to, like, catch me off guard. It's another thing for people to get angry about the fact that adults are enjoying a show that is made well and it is an enjoyable show. And it's like, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm the wrong one who's been watching cartoons my whole life, but it's just like, yeah, I've seen so many kids shows that have like brought me to tears. Freaking OKKO, the ending of that show, like brought me to tears. Good. You know, so yeah. Thank you.
I think that sadly, you know, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and so it's a thing where like if a thing gets popularity and notoriety and gets talked about, I guess mathematically, there's like an automatic opposite reaction that one has to then deal with. It's like, I guess you somehow can't have the popularity and the cultural significance and the love and the beauty without somebody being annoying about it.
Yeah, like I don't know. And like I can be honest. I'm someone who like I dislike a lot of things. I could just be honest about it. But like I don't know. It's weird to be like, well, guys, sorry to say, the enjoy machine's off. We gotta clock in. No more enjoying Steven Universe because I personally don't like it. I'm like, no, my friends can like Steven Universe. And also I think we don't talk about importance and personally for you are two different things. A cartoon cannot be for you and be very important to what it's doing in the grand scheme.
That's what's driving me insane about the Bluey thing. It's like, this show is obviously a phenomenon. It's obviously doing something right, and it's not complete crap like a lot of stuff like baby sensory videos or whatever. Like, that's what people think it is. And then it's like, well, clearly it's not that because it's, you know, it is being such a breakout hit, you know, and it's, again, like the people that are making it, they like care about what they're making, you know, and want to make a good show and want to like make a lasting legacy and they're succeeding, and then people just being like, it feels weird to like defend a show that is so popular because it's like, oh, it doesn't need my defense. But it's just like frustrating how reductive the conversation always gets with that, or like anything else really, where it's like something for kids, and then as soon as somebody starts to like dissect it or analyze it like a little bit too deep, people have to like undercut that. Like the famous example recently was with Encanto, where somebody was like, oh, I just noticed that there's like a bunch of corn on this plate in this scene. That's like a weird detail. And then people would be like, Encanto fans have run out of things to say about this movie. You know, they're talking about corn on a plate. And it's like they're talking about it because an animator put that there for a reason. Well, everything in this freaking movie was made with a purpose.
In a cartoon, you do have to make choices for every single thing that gets put on screen. A choice is made, whether it's a conscious choice or not. Everything you see on screen is a choice. So there's something there.
Anyway, that's that. I just wanted to get that off my chest because it was just annoying me after the recent episode aired, and then people were like saying, like, a bunch of people who are parents were saying like, oh man, I loved this show, like this episode was so good, it brought emotional, because it was just as like the emotional climax of it is all about like the conflict of like a father wants to give a better life to his children, but maybe doing that will end up like causing a rift between them because he's taking away their agency. He's like doing something that they don't want to happen. Like that is like a very mature conflict that has two vastly different perspectives depending on if you're a kid or an adult. And it's like designed that way. So when an adult watching the show with their kids has like such a visceral reaction to it, it makes sense because it was structured that way. And then people being like, I don't know why they think that this shit is deep. It's like, because it is, you dumb fuck. Like it is. It's just, I don't know how else to say it.
I also think like and before we jump off this, I think when it comes to cartoons specifically, there is a weird and I've noticed this online. A lot of people who don't watch cartoons only like cartoons from the viewpoint of nostalgia, and nostalgia is not inherently bad, but like if I had $1 every time
it kind of is.
It's a little bad. Yeah, if I had $1 every time someone goes, this cartoon's bad and stupid, and then watch it, and then then I just wait 5 years, just minimum 5 years to go like this, man, this was kind of good. Remember everybody? No, you fucker. I was out here in the trenches defending Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the trenches. God, and I'm like, you guys are being really weird and racist about this cartoon, and like this. No, I'm not. Like this. Whoa, guys, this show was really good. What happened to it? You guys were really mean on the internet for no reason. Yeah. You guys can't. Yeah. You can't. Like, it's why those memes of like, remember when cartoons used to be good, keep getting pushed forward. Be like, modern cartoons are bad, and I'm like, but the cartoons from 10 years ago was good. Like, you can't keep updating this meme for saying that 10 years ago was a nebulous thing because you keep doing it, and that means the cartoons were always good ones were always coming out. Like,
yes, exactly. Like that's the thing. It's not that like, oh, it's not that Fanboy and Chum Chum sucks or whatever. It's just that like that show like didn't appeal to you, and then it is now appealing to the people who grew up with it. And it's like I try to keep a very open mind when new shows come out. I mean, like even shows that are on Cartoon Network. Like I've talked about this all the time, but like We Baby Bears is like one of the most beautiful, coolest shows to ever air on Cartoon Network. And like it's a modern show airing on Cartoon Network, and like there's a spin-off of Craig of the Creek, which is like arguably the best show to ever air on Cartoon Network. But like, sorry, Toby. I don't know. OKKO is very high up there. I think it's my personal favorite, but Craig of the Creek.
Craig is very good.
Craig is very
extremely good. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like heaven is all around us if you have eyes to see it. That's true. My takeaway with it, because we're going to be talking about a lot of old cartoons, and we're going to be enjoying them, or we're going to be having with Two Stupid Dogs. We are not going to be enjoying them, but like we are going to
designs.
Be. Yeah, we're going to be talking about this good.
Happening.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about these cartoons. Oh man, that Two Stupid Dogs episode is gonna be like 20 minutes long.
No,
but
like, yeah, you're never gonna catch me on here, even if I am like grand hater, as I like to call myself. I'm never gonna say this cartoon had no purpose, because listen, hey, someone got to eat off of this. Someone got to enjoy themselves working off of this. Yeah. There's something to be brought here, and like, I don't know. Everything doesn't have to work for me. Like, I live in a world where Two Stupid Dogs doesn't work for me, but for some reason that no one can explain, I'm excited to talk about Secret Squirrel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I have a pitch. I think when you do Two Stupid Dogs, it should be a double episode with the Dumb and Dumber animated series.
Because Craig McCracken was like, was it Craig or was it Gennady that?
I think Craig designed the. I don't know. I can't speak to the exact specifics on that, but I believe it was something where like Craig maybe was involved. I think he might have even been like art director or something. I don't want to be caught incorrectly attributing stuff like this. But,
exactly.
But the two shows are very connected.
Yeah.
Do that, and then also Secret Squirrel, just like all of that, just like a big cluster. Because like that's technically still a Hanna-Barbera show.
Yeah.
Before, because the first like Cartoon Network Studio show was Dexter, and like we're gonna be doing an episode on that soon, tomorrow potentially, about Dexter's Lab with Steve Urkel, and so tune in, kids, and like so we like first few years or whatever of Cartoon Network, like it is gonna be fun to go through those shows, but it's like, I don't want it to be like, oh, these are the only ones that matter, because if you know me, like even stuff that people don't like or don't care about, like Camp Laszlo, I'm like, I loved rewatching that show and making that video. That video is like the best video I ever made. What was the video on Camp Laszlo? I remember like, I think I talked with Alex right after, like I think that was when we did our versus Megalon episode. Was like right after I uploaded that video, and he was just telling me like, man, I never seen this show, but like you were just like so passionate and happy about this show. It just like was infectious. Like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So I think we had a pretty good conversation around Space Ghost. Like we talked a good amount about the show, and then we talked about our feelings just surrounding like cartoons, its legacy, and like in general like cartoons, like how much it's changed since the 90s. So I think that this was a really good discussion, just overall. So thank you so much for coming on, Toby.
Yeah, thank you.
To be like a first guest for this new series. Do you have anything that you can plug?
Hey, always a pleasure. And, it's funny. The thing you said at the beginning is the thing I'm going to say at the end, which is that Space Ghost is still ahead of its time if you watch it.
Yeah.
When we were watching it, when me and Maddie were watching it this week, we were just like, my God, it's still funny. My God, it still feels modern. It's another show I'll compare that. It's like Twilight Zone. You watch Twilight Zone, and you're like, these episodes still feel like the future in a weird way. They still feel ahead of their time. So as far as plugs, I would say watch Jellystone, watch Shape Island. You can still watch OKKO. Who knows for how long on Hulu?
That is so weird that it's on Disney Plus now because of the Hulu.
That's
like you can watch
very odd.
OKKO on Hulu, and then like the first 4 seasons of Steven Universe, but not the 5th one. Whatever.
Look, you can look. A lot of the business is packaging these objects and selling them to places.
Yeah.
So, look, what I'm just saying is, jump onto Disney Plus, watch an episode of OKKO and an episode of Disney's Doug, back to back, and just alternate is what you should do. And then keep an eye out for announcements of things in the future. And also. Yeah. I don't know when this episode's coming out or when my movie's coming out, but you should definitely watch my movie when you get the chance.
Oh yeah,
AJ Goes to the Dog Park. Because I made a movie, and so you should watch it.
Very excited to check that out. I will say that I just wanted to ask, like, what is your preferred Doug? Is it Disney's Doug or the original Nickelodeon?
Look, I am a defender and supporter of Disney's Doug.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think it's a very interesting show, extremely strange and interesting.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the character Bobby Bodingo.
Mm-hmm.
That said, the original series is a bit more watchable.
Yeah.
They were trying to go for the Disney's Doug. It's almost like a Simpsons. And I respect what they're going for. I respect making the changes. I respect changing the status quo. But the original run is, in my opinion, it is a little bit more watchable. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree, because I remember when like Paramount Plus became a thing and I subscribed to it before realizing like, oh, wait, I don't want to watch any of this. And it's also a terrible app. But I was watching a lot of Nickelodeon stuff, like old 90s Nick stuff. And I actually really enjoyed Doug, which I think is kind of like a controversial opinion as far as, or like an unpopular opinion as far as like cartoon fans our age, because they just see it as like a boring, like they just see it as not nearly as good as like Ren and Stimpy and Rugrats. And like, I do think those shows have a lot going for them, but Doug is such a like a good vibe. Like it's such a feel good show in a lot of ways. It does remind me very much of like it's very Peanuts, you know, in the sense where it's like it makes you feel good even though it's like about a loser, like a complete,
just like Peanuts.
You know, yeah. So I don't know. There's like some facet of that does kind of remind me of that, and I enjoy it. And then, but as far as '90s Nickelodeon shows, Rocko's Modern Life that's my absolute favorite.
I gotta go Disney Doug for the only reason of I was like, and this has not changed. I thought Roger was a girl now. I don't know why, but also
I see where you get that.
Well, now I in fact have to make my icon Roger from Disney Doug with the vest and change my screen name to everything to Roger but a girl. So that's the new brand just dropped. Everybody, throw all my old information away. We're changing it up.
There's something there.
There is.
There's something there. Also, I will say that the cutoff sleeve vest, very cool design.
Super cool.
I drew a bunch of characters where I ripped off that look at that time.
But how about you, Morgan?
You can find me on most social medias at Girl Next Vor. I'm probably screaming about wrestling. I'm sorry, or vampires. Probably Vampire the Masquerade, or if Interview with the Vampire started, I apologize. Yeah. Things are happening. And you can find me on Twitter, but it's a secret because it's not Girl Next Door. Yeah. So you can find me on there. Again, I'm apologizing. But I'm also on some other podcasts, but they're secrets, and I'll talk about them one day.
Yeah. All right. And well, if you want to check me out, then go on over to twitter.com/WazRanger. That's WAZP Ranger. Mostly stream of consciousness stuff, but I'll a lot of complaining about Metroid Prime 4 not being shown, a lot of book reviews and just random things like that. If you want to know what I'm doing on YouTube, and you're not listening to this on YouTube, which you should be, then go on over to It's Only Magic. I make videos and cartoon retrospectives from a personal perspective. If you're listening to this on Patreon, thank you. You donated at the $5 level and you're listening to this a week early or whenever. But if you want to catch it on the free feed, then go on over to It's Only Magic, my YouTube channel. And I'll be uploading them there. And if you don't have the $5, $1 is still plenty. It still helps out a lot. And you can check out a series that I'm doing with my friend Wayne called Wow Cool Robot, where we review every single robot in existence. It's just 5-minute episodes. We record 10 of them at the same time, and then I just edit them into different episodes. And it's like we just review every single robot in existence. So like anime robots, toy robots, movie robots, everything.
What do we feel
any
about
robot
cyborgs?
is on the table. Cyborgs, I don't know yet. We've done some things where it's like this isn't technically a robot, it's just a representation of a robot.
Okay.
Like somebody in a robot outfit or whatever.
All right. Well, just so you know,
we done one of the archangels from Shaman King.
Okay,
which is like a car
spirits,
transformer. Yeah,
well,
like
I want to be sending my red action from OKKO pitch, just so you know.
Yeah.
So
sure, we'll do.
Her
I mean, there are.
I'm giving this.
I was gonna say we can do. There's all the Boxmore bots that we could do. Like we can do Shannon and.
I'm throwing my pitch away. My Shannon. Now I have to do. I will do my 5-episode on Shannon alone. No one is allowed to talk about her but me.
All right. All right. Well. Thank you so much for listening. Next time, join us. We're going to be talking about Dexter's Lab with our guest Steve Yurko. See you there.
You know, I've been interviewed by all of them. Regis, Kathy Lee, Regis and Kathy Lee.
Right.
I'd like to say that I think this show is very bad.
Okay.
And should be stopped.
Oh, okay.
I think you're a bad person, and don't take this the wrong way.
All right.
But I think you represent evil.
Yeah.
And your presence makes any kind of progress in the universe impossible.
Hold on a second, Conan. Moltar, this ant has come back from the dead. It must be one of those self-repeating immortal Franken ants.
It's probably just another different ant.
A second ant? No. It's his brother, avenging the death of his twin. It's his twin brother!
Really?
I'm gonna follow him home. Kill his whole family.